will lend the lobby a certain ambience, Sybil. Has a touch of style about it.
Got a touch of mange about it.
That is not so.
It's got things living in it, Basil. It's nasty.
It is not nasty, it is superb.
Welcome to episode 6 of the Fawlty Towers podcast, where we are either superb or, as is more likely, have lent our listeners a touch of mange.
If you thought your ear was itchy after listening to us last week, it's probably why.
Yes, perhaps Mr. Hutchinson can help you clean them out.
He's got a track record.
He does. How are things?
I'm well this week, Gerry. How are you?
Yeah, okay.
We're getting to the end of season 1 at long last.
We are, and I think this episode is a controversial one.
You think so?
I know so.
I think it's a highly popular one.
It is.
Well regarded, highly rated.
Yes. There are certainly aspects of it that should be. However, there are obviously aspects of it that date it, as other episodes haven't.
Yeah, perhaps we should put together some sort of audio compilation where we discuss these issues.
Like a podcast.
Yes.
Can we do that?
We can try.
We would need a summary.
Of course.
Crack on.
In The Germans, an ailing Sybil instructs Basil from her hospital bed to remember there are 3 things to deal with at the hotel in her absence: mounting a moose head in the lobby, running the fire drill, and dealing with a group of German visitors. Basil is confident he can handle all 3, but after a series of mishaps and a hospital visit of his own, can he keep it together and leave a good impression on his continental guests, or will he slip up once again?
Danke, Ian. We begin this week not at the hotel, and for the first time ever without the sign.
It's an outrage.
Where do we start?
In the hospital. Well, we start, there's an exterior, and then we get a shot of Sybil's hospital notes, which have some interesting information.
They do.
She's 34.
Yeah, right. Sorry, but people looked older back in the day, I suppose. We can discuss Sybil, Prunella Scales, and John Cleese at a later date, but yeah, she doesn't really pass for 34. But in fairness, I think John Cleese was closer to that actual age, and he could pass for 20 years older.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Another thing from the sheet, I think it says private near the bottom, and that would tally with the fact that Sybil has a room to herself. She's not an NHS patient.
That's a good point. Didn't note that.
Yeah, it's not high definition, so it's hard to be certain, but that's my reading of the note.
Yeah, it's quite interesting that. I'm not sure how commonplace that would have been at the time, and especially as we understand that perhaps the hotel business isn't turning a huge profit for them.
But you can understand that it might be the sort of thing a man like Basil would prioritise as a status symbol.
Or else, does Sybil have perhaps some other, perhaps her family has got a bit more money, and this is something that's been...
Maybe. Or maybe it just means she's in a private room. It might be as simple as that, but it's an interesting one.
The date is also noted as being, I think, the 31st of August 1975.
Yeah, a wee bit before it aired.
Yeah. What's she doing in bed?
She is harassing Basil, who's here to visit her.
She's also eating chocolates.
I'm surprised she wasn't smoking.
And back then, I think you may have been allowed, certainly in the hospital building, you could have. Not sure about in bed or not.
Who knows? Well, people who were around at the time will know, but not us.
In any case, yeah, she's annoying Basil because he's struggling to find her bed jacket.
Well, she asks him to bring over a blue bed jacket from the drawer.
Mm-hmm.
He picks out a pink one and tells her he only picked it to annoy her. I quite like that.
He also tells her he will not forget about the fire drill the next day at Fawlty Towers, along with a list of other tasks, including putting up a moose's head that has been sitting for 2 weeks, a bit like the
painting in the first episode, yeah. Also, he has to scrape the mould off the cheese.
Oh, I hate when I have to do that.
Well, you don't want it served with mould, do you?
At least it's not a dead man's cheese.
That's true. It's a obscure Columbo reference.
Mm-hmm.
We heard moments ago the ongoing conversation about the moose head.
Yeah, the differing opinions. I'm with Sybil on that.
Are you?
Yeah.
You don't like a moose head?
No.
Why have you got one in your living room?
It's not my choice.
I suppose your wife's personal kill.
Mm-hmm.
She has to keep it.
The lazy Sybil then tells him to pass her phone book. It's right beside her.
It's literally within her reach. I don't know if she doesn't realise, but I suspect she does.
Yes. Basil has no time for all this, especially as we find out that there are Germans, a large party, arriving the next day.
Yeah, he thinks it's going to be pretty pressed when he gets back to the hotel.
Mm-hmm. There's another sign of the times, as we discover that Sybil is in hospital for 3 days due to nothing more than an ingrowing toenail.
Maybe as a private patient that would still be the case.
I don't think so.
On the NHS, certainly that would be an outpatient type of operation, I'd imagine.
Oh yeah, I mean, it wouldn't even be classed as an operation, it'd be a surgical procedure.
Yeah.
It certainly wouldn't have been for 3 days. No, I don't think even a private patient these days would not be in for that amount of time.
Beds are required.
Mm-hmm.
Too many of us and we're all too old.
Apparently. Basil talks about having her nail mounted as a mark of respect for the pain caused to Sybil.
And taking that in her stride, she wittily suggests he hang it next to the moose where it might fit in.
Now at this point, an old school matron type nurse appears and demands that Basil get out, leading him to insinuate that there is at least one dog in the room.
Yeah, he doesn't like being told what to do by this nurse. I don't know whether he thinks he shouldn't have to leave or he thinks he shouldn't have to do what he's told.
Yeah.
But he rejects the offer to leave anyway.
She's fairly brusque in her attitude, but I think that was back then the matron, that type of nurse. She ran the ward and you didn't mess with them. But
yeah, he then gets a nice opportunity as Sybil has a thermometer placed in her mouth and cannot respond to any of his barbs.
What does he do?
He just runs his mouth a little bit without her being able to respond.
Is this at the point where he tries to confirm that the nurse and the doctors are aware of what's to happen to Sybil? I think he's about sarcastic about that.
Yeah, he's full of sarcasm. I mean, he's there to support her, I guess, but he's not enjoying his visit to the hospital, I don't really think.
So he gets up to leave. However, this is the first major point of contention.
Oh.
We have, in my mind, quite an unpleasant moment as he is visibly taken aback and perhaps scared when he bumps into the doctor on the way out, and the doctor is black.
Yeah, I don't know if that's what happens. He turns around and the guy's right there and he just gets a fright. I think that's a fairly standard thing.
Yeah, but if you're writing that, it can be taken as an inappropriate gesture. So if you were writing that, you would think, you know what, people might misconstrue this, so we'll be careful with how we do that.
Maybe. I have seen at least one other source suggest they thought it was a racial thing, that he was shocked by the presence of this doctor. But I don't know, to me, you might be shocked in that circumstance. Anyway, you've come out a door, you shut the door, and then when you turn around, there's someone right in your face. It's a fairly standard comedy thing that you would take a step back.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But putting it in context of the overall episode where race and perhaps lack of tolerance is fairly prevalent, then...
Well, we'll see how it fits with the rest.
I mean, what I think is that this would certainly not have been written like this today. So this is one of the things that does date it. The fact that we're talking about it and the fact that there is debate shows that it's not a cut and dry...
Supporting my point of view, Basil immediately, on learning this is the doctor, shakes his hand, talks to him in quite a friendly manner about Sybil's treatment.
Yeah, but I mean, you get different levels and different ways of showing...
He's not trying to get out of the conversation, though, or trying to avoid contact with this man.
No, but that doesn't mean to say you're not a racist, or you're not acting in a racist way.
Okay, maybe. In any event, he seems quite pleased when he learns that the recovery period will be painful for Sybil.
Yeah, this cheers him up immensely. And we cut to reception, where, still very chirpy, he speaks to the Major, who appears more confused than ever and can't quite grasp where Sybil is and why.
Yeah, he's quite confused generally. I think he talks about someone called Elsie, who he thought was around, but she seems to be a member of staff who left previously.
Yeah, I think the understanding is that Elsie would have been Polly's predecessor.
Yeah, I assumed he was seeing Polly and thinking it was still the same person.
Mm-hmm. He then, the Major that is, rambles on about knowing a girl once and that he took her to see India.
Yes, Basil perks up at this.
He's impressed.
Could be an interesting story, yeah.
But no, it was cricket at the Oval.
Yes, of course.
Before things get certainly very racist, and there's no doubt or debate about this.
Yeah.
And I think the only discussion to be had is whether or not Basil could have done more to show his disgust if that was the case. So the Major uses a couple of terms which are utterly unacceptable today.
Yes.
Basil doesn't condone or agree with it, but
Or repeat them.
but neither does he tell the Major that it's not on.
Sure, but that could be to do with who it is that's saying these things. So it could just be that, well, what's the point? This is just the Major. There's nothing we're going to change. Ignore it. Pretend it didn't happen. Rather than, we have to challenge him on this.
Yeah.
Because would he even take it in if you challenged him? Would he understand? He certainly wouldn't agree.
No, I think on this point I do agree with you. I think that it's like when your grandparents say something that's not acceptable anymore. You used to say that and you'd think, there's no point in having an argument. People in their 80s there's just no point.
Yeah, it happens in other circumstances. If a work colleague has strong political opinions that you don't agree with, you don't have to challenge them every time you see them in the workplace.
No, that's true, but political opinions aren't generally illegal or hugely offensive to certain groups of people. It's...
Yeah. Now, in terms of the show using these terms,
yeah,
I think you wouldn't do it now. And I think that's because nowadays we understand that these terms, the communities that are referred to by these terms, find it unacceptable that they're used even to highlight racism.
Yeah, but, okay, that's the thing. I don't think the show, and this is a negative way of looking at it, the show was using those terms for comedy purposes. And it wasn't trying to say, oh, look how terrible this is.
No.
It was simply...
Look how racist the Major is.
Yes. And there was nothing to balance. There's no balance.
There's no sanctions or any obvious comeuppance as a result of this. He's not shown to be a bad person.
Precisely. We're still, and in future episodes, and we're still meant to see him as a lovable old fella.
Yeah.
Not a horrible old racist.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, the show has to, and therefore the writing, it's not necessarily being overtly racist itself, but it is using this for comedy purposes. And it's not a satire.
No, I just don't think you would do it anymore.
You wouldn't.
And it's actually quite a good joke, but it's not an appropriate one to tell on television.
What joke was that?
The Major's, the way they've used the Major's language, it's a good...
All right, yeah.
It's a good twisting of expectations. But, I don't think you would even try it. No. I don't think that there's any value in even trying it. Even if you're an edgy sort of comedian, you're not going to think, oh, here's a clever thing.
Yeah.
Because, like you say, it's not done in a way that has a positive goal or a positive underlying message or anything like that. So it's just gratuitous.
And Basil doesn't get off the hook anyway, because whilst perhaps not being racist himself, he's quite happy to be very sexist.
Well, that's what I've put a note here. Is Basil's misogyny worse or as bad as the Major's racism? Because he doesn't even consider that he might be wrong either.
I mean, I know there's probably plenty of huge fans of the show listening right now and calling us all sorts of names for being lefty liberal do-gooders types, but we have to address it.
We have to talk about it. It's certainly the case. And I think it doesn't change the show or whether the show is a good show or anything. That's just this particular scene is worth discussing. And
I would refer you back to our introductory episode where we mentioned the fact that this is part of what we're doing. It's not just discussing the comedy. We are trying to consider how it stands up.
Yeah. I have one other question about this scene. I don't understand his story about the girl at the cricket.
She was using him, and I think she buggered off with his wallet. It's showing that he isn't a ladies' man. He is one of these old school military types. No time for women. He was all about the lads and the guys and king and country and all that type of stuff, queen and country. And very naive when it came to that. He took someone out on a date once. He knew a girl once, and she wasn't interested in him. Stole his money.
Yeah, it was a bit of a weird story.
It was. He's a weird guy. And I also think he was drunk.
At the time or when he's telling the story?
Who knows?
For all that it's unacceptable, this content is quite well performed.
Yes, yeah.
By the two of them. And we get more of it. This is actually, in my opinion, the best episode so far for the work done between pairs of performers. So there's a few different scenes where you get two people working off each other and it's very snappy and it's very good, and this was one of them.
Polly arrived at this point looking for her German phrase book, and the subject is changed to the guests who will be arriving. And this, you would imagine, doesn't go down too well with the old boy.
No, he doesn't like Germans very much.
Yeah. Maybe in this case a little more understandably, considering his age and what he's went through.
Sure.
Basil half-heartedly suggests to the Major that they forgive and forget, but it doesn't seem that bothered himself and doesn't see the point in trying to learn their language.
No, well, he's not going to Germany.
Yeah.
So Polly and the Major move on, and Basil decides that it's time to hang the moose.
Yeah, so he gets it from the office and is trying to put it up when he is firstly disturbed by the Major again, who is looking for a fruit juice, and I think that's code.
Yes, of course it is. Basil noticed that himself.
And then by the phone. As usual, there is no one there to answer it. So he has to stop what he's doing and frustratingly finds that it is Sybil checking up on him.
Yes, Fawlty Towers, hello. I was just doing it, you stupid woman. I just put it down to come here to be reminded by you to do what I'm already doing. I mean, what is the point of reminding me to do what I'm already doing? I mean, what is the bloody point? I'm doing it, aren't I? Yes, I picked it up, yes. No, I haven't had a chance yet. I've been at it solidly ever since I got back. Yes, I will, yes. No, I haven't yet, but I will, yes. Yes, I know it is, yes. I'll try and get it cleared up. Anything else? I mean, would you like the hotel moved a bit to the left, or...? Yes, right, well, enjoy the operation, dear. Let's hope nothing goes wrong. Wish it was an ingrowing tongue. Yes! Oh, it's the Admirable Crichton. Well...
You called, son?
Last week, but not to worry.
Okay.
Oh, Buddha. Look, go and get me a hammer.
Como?
Hammer.
Hammer. Oh, a hammer sandwich.
Oh, do I have to go through this every time? Look, a hammer.
My hamster?
No, not your hamster. How can I knock a nail in with your hamster? Well, I could try. No, it doesn't matter. All right, I'll get it. You come here and tidy. You know, tidy?
Oh, tidy.
Yes, I get hammer and hit you on the head with it. God, tidy.
The Admirable Crichton, I know who that was.
Who?
It's a movie. It's a butler who saves some English aristocrats when they're shipwrecked.
Mm-hmm.
So it fits quite nicely.
Is it Kenneth Moore on that?
I'm not sure, maybe. I've not watched it.
I have watched it, I can't remember. I think it might be Kenneth Moore. It's one of those ones. Or John Mills, one of those types. I think maybe Kenneth Moore.
Okay.
Probably wrong.
I didn't go that far into my research just to actually watch the movie.
Fair enough. Let's continue. You feel sort of sorry for Basil again there. He's trying to man the ship, the decks, whatever they do.
Get the job done.
That's it. I've seen this a few times where he's run off his feet.
Yeah, and you can't get things done for people not helping.
Mm-hmm. So, with Manuel now cleaning behind reception and practising his English, he causes a great deal of shock and confusion to the Major. What happens?
Oh, this was maybe my favourite scene of the series so far.
Okay.
So the Major comes through and the Moosehead is sitting on reception's desk and Manuel's on the floor down tidying, and the Major doesn't know that Manuel is there. But he's reading or practising his English. I learn English, I learn it from a book, or I speak English, I learn it from a book. And the Major obviously thinks the moose is speaking to him. I think at one point Manuel stands up when the Major's not looking and says, "Oh, hello, Major," and he turns back around and it's just the moose.
Yeah.
It's really quite entertaining.
And so he compliments Basil on it when he comes through to hang it up, and is told that it costs £12, but is Canadian and not Japanese as the Major had assumed.
Yeah, the Major didn't realise that Canada were so advanced.
Polly comes through. She's got flowers and answers the phone again to Sybil, and an annoyed Basil says that he wishes her nail was the one that he is currently hammering.
There's then a really brilliant piece of work from Polly. Basil suffers a series of closely concentrated misfortunes, and she narrates them expertly to Sybil on the phone. It's just, there's no point in me saying it because you need to watch this.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
Yeah, I think on top of a moose head falling on him, I think he gets a vase and all sorts of other head injuries occur.
Yeah, and he gets trapped under a chair and falls over Manuel and various things. We then get a caption on the screen.
We do. Now, this is not necessarily a complaint, but something we have observed
Yeah,
over the
it's-
episodes.
I think we said back at the start, it's a bit wibbly wobbly, timey wimey with respect to how long things take and where people go and where they come back from. But here we see it's the next morning.
At the reception, where Basil has finally hung the moose, although the antlers are not in absolutely mint condition.
No, one of them's half off.
He then very abruptly informs a couple of the upcoming fire drill and is equally snarky when Polly reminds him of the drill himself and points out an issue with helping upstairs.
Yep, we get another potentially racist bit here when Basil refers to Polly learning 2 Oriental languages.
Yeah.
Bit imperialist there.
Yeah. At the time, however, probably acceptable.
Common tongue, I guess. So Basil then goes over with Polly what her role is during the fire drill. And she's a bit concerned because she's going to be the only person who goes upstairs to check the guest rooms are clear.
Yeah.
But she only works at mealtime.
Yeah, he's not really interested, is he?
No, he doesn't know why folk keep trying to cause him more problems.
The phone then adds to his stress again when Sybil calls to remind him of the drill and tell him that she's moved the key for the alarm into the safe.
Yeah, and you can understand Sybil's probably bored stupid in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
This is probably all she's got to entertain her, is harassing Basil.
Yeah. However, this is when things start to go wrong, as when he opens the safe, the burglar alarm goes off and the guests think that it is the fire drill.
Yeah, we then get a scene which is straight out of Life of Brian. That's completely Python-esque, where Basil debates the crowd of people about the fire alarm, whether it was the fire alarm or the burglar alarm, why the burglar alarm's gone off, what the difference between the 2 alarms is, and what the time is, and whether it's time for the drill. It's very entertaining, very well done.
Manuel and Polly don't help matters when they start performing their drill duties, and even one of Gatsby or Tibbs, can't remember which one, is insulted by Basil.
Yeah, he just yells in her face, I think.
So after turning off the fire alarm, he jumps and shouts at Sybil, who again has called, and then tells the gathered guests that the real drill will commence in 30 seconds.
And they don't move.
No, he's not happy about this. And it's incredible. He lets them know this by saying that he hopes they all burn.
If you won't do the drill properly, then
Yeah.
hell mend you.
We're in the kitchen. What's happening here?
Manuel's been sent to put the chips on because he came out too soon, and unfortunately sets himself on fire and also the rest of the kitchen.
Yeah, it's an odd one that, managing to set a cooker on fire.
Yes, along with his oven gloves.
Back out at reception, the drill has now started, and the guests have left, but Basil, as is typical, will not listen when Manuel appears from the kitchen, covered in scorch marks, and followed by a gust of smoke.
Yes, no, Basil says this is not fire, it's only Bell.
Yeah, so he pushes him back in twice.
And locks him in.
Yeah, telling him again that it's only a drill, and even Polly takes up Basil's position here, his stance.
Yeah, well, that's the obvious position, isn't it?
Not when there's smoke billowing out of the kitchen.
They didn't notice that.
After the drill is complete, Basil tells the guest to re-enter as Polly takes a call from Sybil that she can barely hear over the racket being caused by Manuel from the kitchen.
Yeah, the guests are complaining about that as well.
Yeah, so Basil grudgingly lets Manuel out, who falls to his knees. I think he's clasping a frying pan at this point. And Basil realises the severity of the situation now.
Yeah, and he has to make a somewhat embarrassing announcement to the guests.
Yeah, he is, very embarrassed. So he doesn't start with full gusto.
No. So a wee sort of high-pitched squeak.
Yeah.
Fire? Once the guests are out the hotel, though, he begins to panic.
Yes, and I think Polly tells him to turn or to set the fire alarm off.
Yeah, this is one of these manic episodes that we've talked about him having in the past. He's hyperactive and bouncing around from one place to another. He throws a typewriter at the alarm and misses.
Yeah, I think he curses God for not being able to find, because that's the point. He can't find the key to set it
Yeah,
off.
that he was just using, yeah.
Yeah, so he's trying to break it to make it ring.
Yeah. At which point, Sybil calls again.
And this time he finds a
use for the phone, yes. He's used it to smash the glass and says thank you before dropping it on the floor and then going for the fire extinguisher.
Yeah, where we get a bit of slapstick as he manages to squirt himself in the face whilst trying to use the thing before things finally take their toll and he hits himself in the head with the frying pan that Manuel is carrying and ends up out cold.
Yeah, I thought, and I think John Cleese says similar on the commentary, that it wasn't a big enough blow. That final blow should have been more spectacular.
Yeah, but I'm going to disagree with John Cleese again.
You always do every week.
I know, it's just a habit now. On its own, I would agree it wouldn't be, but you have to remember it's a cumulative effect of a number of recent bashes.
Suppose he had the moose fall on his head and he had the flowers fall on his head and he fell over and hit his head.
Yeah, doesn't take much if you're perhaps already concussed.
Yeah, maybe.
So what's happened to him?
He's now in hospital with a bandage round his head and he's concussed.
Yeah, he mumbles incoherently as he comes round. We see that Sybil is now sitting beside him in a wheelchair, obviously post-operation.
Yeah, I want to take issue with something you said a few weeks ago. You say there's no point in the series where they show affection for one another.
Okay.
And I think they're doing it in this episode. They both... Sybil doesn't need to be there looking after Basil while he's unconscious.
No, but as you said just a few moments ago, I mean, she's bored.
Yeah, but still.
So if your husband's there, you're not going to, and you're in the hospital, what do you mean she doesn't need to be there? If your husband's...
Yeah, well, she's making the effort because
No,
she
but
cares
even if
about
it was
him.
just someone you knew, if I was in the hospital and for that, and then you ended up coming, it doesn't mean to say I love you, or I'm showing you a massive amount of affection, but I'd be thinking, oh, Ian's in the hospital, I'm bored, I'm going to go and see what he's up to.
I'm not sure. He's just been brought into the hospital. I think she's here to make sure he's okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously it's not a...
I'm not
necessarily
saying,
romantic
it's
affection.
the most romantic gesture that we've ever seen, but
You're
for
grasping
these
at-
two it is.
Yeah, but you're grasping at straws. Yeah, they're both in hospital to get together, and you're
It's also an opportunity to abuse one another, obviously.
yeah.
Basil is a little bit doolally from the concussion, but wants to go back to the hotel. And he's got somebody to blame for his incident with the fire extinguisher.
Harold Wilson.
Yes, with the Labour leader at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course it's his fault.
Mm.
This country, you know.
And at this point, the nurse enters.
Now, what are you doing out of your bed?
I'm going home, thank you so much.
Yes, well, we'll let the doctor decide that now, shall we?
No, let's not.
Now, come along.
Don't
Get
touch
to
me,
bed.
I don't know where you've been.
Yes. We must have our little jokes.
Yes, we mustn't we? My God, you're ugly, aren't you?
Basil? I'll get the doctor.
You need a plastic surgeon, dear, not a doctor.
Talk to sister like that. Get back into bed.
Do you not seem to realise that I'm needed at the hotel?
No, you're not. It's running beautifully without you.
Polly cannot cope!
Well, she can't fall over waiters or get herself jammed under desks or start burglar alarms or lock people in burning rooms or fire extinguishers straight in her own face. But I should think the hotel can do without her sort of coping for a couple of days. What do you think, Basil?
What?
Oh, hello, Doctor.
Out of bed, Mr. Fawlty?
Sort of. Oh, there they are. Well, better get back into bed. Feel a little bit woozy.
You will for a time, Mr. Fawlty. You will.
Yes, quite.
You should get as much rest as you can. As much rest as you can. As much rest as you can.
Yeah, I don't understand what the doctor's trying to do here.
Yeah, some sort of hypnosis,
It's not-
relaxation.
I don't think that's practiced medical procedure.
No, someone who's been banged on the head, you twist his head around.
Rotate their neck until they fall immediately asleep.
No. In any case, as soon as the doctor and Sybil leave, Basil opens up one manic eye.
Presumably he's heading back to the hotel.
Of course. And that's where we head. We're at reception. The Germans have arrived and Polly is coping very professionally with things. But Basil indeed turns up, still bandaged
Clearly still concussed.
and looking to take charge.
He calls Manuel dear a couple of times, thinking he's Sybil,
Yeah.
but also asks him to carry bags.
His confusion is not helped when a couple approach, and after speaking to him, he is relieved to discover that they are German.
Yeah, he's not lost the power to process speech.
Yeah.
They want to rent a car, but he doesn't really get that because he doesn't speak any German. He thinks they want to go and get meat for the kitchen
They're
or something.
volunteering to get some meat. He then goes on to disturb them by communicating that the hotel has their own meat before Polly appears and is rightly puzzled by his presence.
Yeah. She sends him away from this engagement and he bumps into the old women who think he's not well and he says, perhaps not, but I'll live longer than you.
Yes. Well, that's true.
Fair enough. Basil and Polly get back together, and he makes it clear to her not to mention the war to the Germans. It's obviously something that's a bit more touchy then than it would be now. You wouldn't have a problem mentioning the war to the Germans now.
No, well, wouldn't be the first thing I would bring up.
No, but you wouldn't expect them to be touchy about it.
Depends how you approach it.
Oh, how could you approach it that would offend a German person?
I don't know, but it's like if I'm introduced to, hey, here's my mate Franz. Oh, hi, how you doing, Franz?
Lost the war.
What about that war, eh? They might be offended. It's why are you bringing that up?
That would make you seem like an idiot more than upset them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
Basil assumes these Germans do not speak English and gesticulates at them wildly.
He does, yeah.
But they do speak English.
Of course they do.
He's quite pleased about that. But he keeps dropping the word war into everything that he says and references to the war.
And notes his shrapnel wound.
But he insists it's from the Korean war, doesn't he?
Yes.
He talks about how he didn't vote for EEC membership. That was a couple of years earlier than this. There was a vote in the UK to join the EEC. But now that they're in, he wants to make it work.
How would you see Basil voting on the big issues these days?
I think...
Pro-Brexit?
I don't know.
No?
I don't know, because the tourist industry is quite important to him. And wrecking the whole country for the rich people. But then he thinks he wants to be a rich person.
Yeah, but does he... Are foreign tourists the biggest? I don't know.
I suppose, yeah, you might think that Brexit's going to make us all so poor we can only afford to holiday at home, as is the case.
Anyway, the Germans are shown through to the dining room, and at the same time, we see a concerned Polly call for the doctor.
Yeah, against Basil's wishes, no doubt, but I think it's something that has to be taken out of his hands.
So as you mentioned there, after discussing the EEC and making some really funny jokes, he begins to take their orders.
Never mind.
May we have 2 eggs mayonnaises, please?
Certainly. Why not? Why not indeed? We're all friends now, eh?
A prawn cocktail.
All in the market together. Old differences forgotten, and no need at all to mention the war. Sorry. What was it again?
A prawn cocktail.
Oh, prawn, that was it. When you said prawn, I thought you said war. Oh, the war. Oh, yes, completely slipped my mind. Yes, I've forgotten all about it. Himmler and all that. Oh, yes, completely forgotten it, just like that. Sorry, what was it again?
A prawn cocktail.
Oh, yes, Eva prawn, yes. And Goebbels, too. He's not about to hardly remember at all.
And ein pickled herring.
Hermann Göring, yes. And von Ribbentrop, that was another one.
And 4 cold meat salads, please.
Certainly. Well, I'll just get your hors d'oeuvres. Hors d'oeuvres, which must be obeyed at all times without question. Sorry.
Georgie, will you please call your wife immediately?
Sybil, she's in the hospital, you silly girl.
Yes, call her there.
I can't. I've got too much to do. Listen, don't mention the war. I mentioned it once, but I think I got away with it all right. So, it's all forgotten now, and let's hear no more about it. So that's 2 egg mayonnaise, a prawn Goebbels, a Hermann Göring, and 4 colded salads. Oh, wait a minute, I got a bit confused here. Sorry, I got a bit confused because everyone keeps mentioning the war. So could you... What's the matter?
It's all right.
I think one of the most famous scenes in TV history in Britain.
Very well delivered, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know if a modern audience would maybe get all the references.
I think so. I mean, if you're a 13-year-old girl who's more interested in Instagram, then perhaps not, but...
That's a little bit prejudiced, is it not?
Well, you're the one that's saying that a modern audience wouldn't get it. I think anyone who's...
Well, they would understand that he's making war references, but they might not know what cold it says, for example, or Eva Braun might not be a known...
But when you say we're a modern audience...
I suppose. We know. That's
people are born. Yeah, we were born after this episode aired, so...
Okay.
Yeah.
It's the last time you'll be able to say that on this podcast.
Let's move on. So, as we heard at the end of the clip there, one guest is breaking down and Basil tries to cheer them up by telling war jokes about bombers over Berlin.
Well, he realises, though, and aborts that particular effort.
Yes, but doesn't improve the situation.
No, he's going to do an impression to cheer them up.
What, of who? Jimmy Cagney, is it?
Well, Polly suggests that.
Yeah.
He doesn't do Jimmy Cagney.
Who does he do?
I believe it's Hitler.
Yeah.
And I suspect this might be a little nod to the Ministry of Silly Walks as well.
Of course it is, yeah. And he does this walk through the dining room, out into reception and back in, I think before calling them stupid krauts.
Yeah, he accuses them of having no sense of humour.
Yeah.
Which is a well-known
German trait.
stereotype about the Germans.
Or that, yeah. He then insists, I think he's in a panic here, that it's all a joke, and gets angry when he's told that it is not funny for any of the Germans, at which point he asks who won the bloody war.
And he accuses them of starting it, of course.
Of course.
Dr. Finn arrives at this stage. I don't know why he's out of the hospital.
Is that his surname, Finn?
Yes.
Didn't catch that, I just call him the doc.
Okay. Yeah, he's also doing a little bit of an extra shift here, coming out to capture Basil.
Well, who would, if you're saying someone's having a mental breakdown and they're concussed, who would you call for? I mean, these days you would call for the paramedics, I suppose.
Yeah, I think paramedics. I don't think you would call for
Your ward doctor.
consultant. No, I don't think that's the one. Anyway, he tries to catch Basil, but he knows he's wearing the hotel better than Dr. Finn does, and he's made a clean getaway until he makes the critical error of standing too near the moose.
Yes, where he is incapacitated, and Manuel ends up wearing the moose's head.
Yeah, that leads to another exchange with the Major. The moose / Manuel says, he hit me on the head, but the Major's noted quite rightly that, no, you hit him on the head.
And the episode ends with the Germans looking on at the shambles before them and wondering how they ever managed to win the war. Now, how did you take that? It's almost as if they're disappointed. It's like, oh, how did we get beat with this mob?
But I don't think they actually, I think they're making a joke about the war.
Yeah, well, look, they are, but yeah, okay. So yeah, an episode which is hugely famous, very funny in parts, some very dodgy, dubious moments as well. But do you think that you can forgive? That's the thing. Do you think because it's great in some parts that you can overlook, or you should overlook, or forgive the other parts which are not as savoury?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. In general?
Yeah, no, I don't think you should, because there's one part of this that's now unacceptable. You should write off the rest of the episode.
Okay.
It doesn't make sense to me.
Do you think that it was acceptable back then? It's obviously more unacceptable. Do you think that people back then were laughing at the terms used by the Major? They thought, oh, this is great fun, this, because today, if it was written today, you wouldn't.
The risk with this is that the people who think like the Major would also find this funny.
Yeah.
They would think the Major's joke was funny.
Yeah.
And that there wasn't a problem. Whereas other folk would think it's funny that we're laughing at him for being racist.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in any case, it's an episode that is worth talking about. People have for decades now. They've written about it, and yeah, I mean, it's understandable. You can see how times have changed, and we shouldn't judge it by today's standards because it wasn't written or performed today.
I think it's perfectly understandable if somebody wants to be offended by that and feel that they don't want to watch this episode. That's fair enough. They're entitled to not watch this episode.
To be fair, I think the people who would be offended and wouldn't want to watch it wouldn't have been fans of Fawlty Towers in the first place.
But maybe they would, because there's some clever stuff. People like wit. So, I don't know. But I'm not going to...
Let us know.
Yeah, people who have thoughts on this episode, come to fawltytowerspodcast.com and find the page for the Germans and give us your thoughts, because we're quite interested to hear how you feel about this.
Or they can talk to us on social platforms.
Yeah, we're at Fawlty Podcast on Twitter and Facebook. Actually, people who watched it when it came out, I would like to know, have your opinions changed? How did you feel about it when you first watched it? How do you feel about it now? That would be really interesting. So if anyone can get back to us on that, that'd be something we'd be very interested to hear about.
And while we're at it, what about iTunes?
Yes, leave us reviews and make them good reviews, please, on Apple Podcasts or iTunes. That would be very much appreciated. It makes a big difference. It helps more people find the show. Gets a better chat going on. It'll be good.
It does, yeah. Okay, some trivia and production information. How about it?
Okay.
24th of October 1975 was the original air date. I'm only going to look at 3 guest stars this week. Brenda Cowling played the nurse. She died in 2010, aged 85, at Denville Hall. I'll get back to Denville Hall in a moment.
Okay.
We've discussed her before, or we've certainly watched her before.
Okay.
She played Mrs. Thrimpson in Jonathan Creek, Gorgon's Wood, the old catatonic chancer, if you remember.
Yeah, that was a good episode, and that was like, well, it wasn't a good episode at all, but that was a good role.
Yeah. She's also been in Octopussy, French and Saunders, The Bill, Casualty, Urang My Lord, Potter, Jabberwocky, playing Mrs. Fishfinger, always like Mr. Fishfinger, Z-Cars, and The Television Club. Lewis Mahoney played the Doctor. He was born in 1938 and has been in Hobie City, Doctors in Casualty. Bit of a theme here. As well as Doctor Who in the 70s
Doctor
and... Exactly. The 70s and 2007.
He must have the face of a doctor.
Yeah. Runaway Bay and Z Cars. Now, apparently, he was one of the first black actors to appear regularly on British TV.
Yeah, I understand he's the only black actor to appear in Fawlty Towers.
Yeah.
Which is another discussion point that we can come to in due course, or not.
No, we probably won't, because in fairness, I mean, I think in Torquay in the 70s, I'm not sure how many non-white people would have been cutting around. Probably not that many.
I don't know.
And finally, Claire Davenport played Mrs. Wilson. Now, she was the blonde who was part of the crowd, yeah. She died in 2002, aged 68, and has appeared in The Elephant Man as Fat Lady, and The Return of the Jedi as Fat Dancer. Also, Emu's Pink Windmill, By the Sword Divided, The Dick Emery Show, Couples, and also Doctor Who. So I mentioned Denville Hall a moment ago.
You did.
It's a retirement home for actors in Northwood. People who have died there include Richard and Sheila Attenborough, Patsy Byrne, who played Nursey in Blackadder, Robert Hardy, Peter Sallis from Last of the Summer Wine, Brian Cant, and Andrew Sachs.
Interesting.
The original set of The Mousetrap was auctioned to raise money for it, and in the 60s and 70s, stars including Sean Connery, Elizabeth Taylor, Michael Caine, and Paul Schofield all get involved in charity drives and donated earnings to the place.
Won't be long till they're old enough to move in.
Okay, what do you have for us? Anything?
I think I went through my trivia as we got through the episode, so I don't have anything additional.
I've got the hospital location.
Okay.
It is still operational. It's Northwick Park Hospital in Brent.
That was a question I was going to ask. Okay, so that building is a very 60s, 70s design.
Mm-hmm.
The secondary school that I went to was the same sort of very blocky design.
Horrible.
Were they viewed as attractive in the 60s and 70s when they were going up?
I'm not sure. I think they were considered to be cutting edge or perhaps pushing boundaries. I don't think that you would have considered it the average person. I think the architects thought they were doing something smart.
Yeah.
And being clever and being progressive. Obviously they weren't.
No, of course not. Some of them were listed, which is a bizarre decision.
Yeah. Other things filmed there include Green Wing, The Omen, and Prime Suspect. Apparently, Simon Le Bon worked there as a hospital porter before he became famous with the Duran Duran.
That's what we call trivia.
A few other things I have. The BBC apparently had to pay Andrew Sachs £700 after he received burns while filming this episode.
Yeah, I read his comments on this, I think in his autobiography. He'd been assured by the production folk that he wouldn't feel a thing, but they were wrong.
And he did.
And he did, and he was scarred for life, I think.
Okay. With regard to the offensive words and language, apparently there is a pre-watershed version that is shown, certainly in the BBC here, but after 9 PM, the original cut is aired.
It's not on very often.
Gold has it quite a bit.
I mean, it's on Netflix, obviously, they've got rights to it, but...
What version? I assume it's the uncut version on Netflix.
Uncut version, yep.
Okay. And we get the first mention of Manuel's hamster, which will play a bigger role in the future.
We'll look out for that.
Do you have a favourite scene this week?
Yeah, I mean, there was a couple, like I said, there was a couple of these one-on-one moments that I thought were very good, but my favourite was Polly narrating Basil's mishaps behind the reception desk.
That was very good. I think I liked best Basil wishing that Sybil had an ingrowing tongue. Okay, that's us for Season 1.
Yeah, I hope you enjoyed the podcast. We'll be back with Season 2 next week.
Episode 1, Communication Problems.
Hopefully that'll go very well.
Until then,
Cheerio.
bye-bye.